Academic year since last August, we have been talking about God's wisdom. We've been searching Proverbs and sometimes Ecclesiastes for the teachings of the Lord's wisdom. And I hope you have noticed, we've been hearing the same message over and over again. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Wisdom starts when we fear God. In other words, wisdom is the product of heart change. Wisdom is not the product of book learning, is not the product of reasoning, is not the product of self-discipline. Wisdom is the direct miracle of God giving us His Holy Spirit so that we see His world from His perspective. We have also seen this year that God's wisdom is a collision with this world, and specifically with the world we carry around in our heads. There's a world that we want to exist, that we imagine, that we fantasize about, a world that is characterized by our ambitions and desires. There's that world, and then there's the real world. And the collision is when God's wisdom comes to us in our heads and says, this world that you have created inside your mind, in your imagination, with your desires and your ambitions, this world is delusional. It doesn't exist. Join us. Join God in His world, the real one, the one that He made. The real world is fallen. It's dangerous. The real world calls us to a life of trusting God, that if we do things God's way, that He is going to guard us and bless us, and that His grace is going to cause us to thrive, even in the midst of great turmoil and conflict. And so we've come to a great stopping point to summarize all of these things this morning, and that is how we use words and how we confront the reality of evil words. And that is characterized by, as Dean read for us, whispering, storytelling, gossiping, hidden hatred, and words that are glazed with politeness. It's a two-faced world, and we have to live in that world, which means we have to come out of our heads and embrace God's world as He made it and trust Him. And we have to do that not only individually, we have to do it corporately. We have an anatomy here of quarrels, how quarrels start, where they originate, and how they stop. And I have a very straightforward contention for you this morning, a proposal, an argument. My argument is this: wisdom is not just an individual characteristic. It is good for us as individuals to have wisdom. That's a good thing. We talk a lot about that. But wisdom in the book of Proverbs is a characteristic of the whole community. And this issue of how we use words and how we interact with each other calls us to be a community that is wise. It confronts us with the reality that if we do not own the quality of our community, no one else will. Or let me put it even more directly. If we don't take responsibility for the character of who we are as a people, as a congregation, no one else will. God is not going to do for us what He has called us to do. We want this magic to descend on the church the magic of the unity of God's people. We want him to just sort of zap us and make us unified and solve all the problems and have us live at peace with each other. And I picture the God of Proverbs, Jesus. He's the God of Proverbs, remember. I picture him saying from his throne, I have given you every tool, the power of my Holy Spirit, the force of my truth. I have given you my presence. I have given you my life, as we just celebrated in communion. I have given you the power of my resurrection. And I am calling you to take hold of this character of wisdom and implement this in your community's life. This is tough stuff. So let's dive in. Proverbs chapter 26, beginning at verse 20. There are three characteristics here in these first three verses of quarrels and how quarrels break out. Verse 20. For lack of wood, the fire goes out. Well, that's easy to see. We'll all have campfires and fires in the fire pits in our backyard, and when we don't put more wood on the fire's going to go out. That's very straightforward. And where there is no whisperer, quarreling ceases. Amazing. This is saying that the conflicts and strife in our lives quiet down and cease when whispering stops. So let's think about this from two perspectives. Let's understand that every single proverb is to be compared in relation to the key to the entire book, and that is the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So who is this whisperer? The whisperer is the person who has an agenda, and he or she is actively trying to implement that agenda without being heard, without being seen. And so why does the whisperer whisper? Because if everybody knew what the whisperer was saying to all of these individuals, then the whisperer would be in trouble. But in fact, the whisperer connives and finds ways to sort of say this to this person and this other thing slightly different to this other person about the same issue. And so the whisperer works the room and says a lot, but is responsible for none of it. So where is the fear of God in the whisperer? Gone. It's not there. The whisperer believes that his or her agenda, goals, ambitions, judgments, whatever it may be, that person is saying, my things are the most important things in the room, and I am going to get what I want, no matter what it takes. And so the whisperer has no fear of God. There's an ant on my pulpit. I think there's Proverbs about ants, but not on my pulpit. I want them off. What was I saying? Oh, whisperers. The whisperer loves his agenda more than he fears God. And so why does whispering take place? Because there's a willful refusal to recognize that there will be accountability for every idle word, every bit of deceit, every bit of conniving, every bit of manipulation. So the whisperer does not fear God, and so does not have knowledge. Now, I want to focus on another thing here, and that is the setting aside of responsibility. or the refusal to be accountable for what the whisperer says. The whisperer, by speaking in secret to all of these individuals, is saying, I can tell you something and I don't have to answer for it. If someone argues with me or calls me out, I've got deniability, because I only said it to this one person. It's my word against them. And so the whisperer is whispering because that way he or she is not accountable for what he or she has said. We love that. We love saying things that we are not accountable for. When you are not accountable or not held responsible or not answerable for what you say, you've got this freedom. You can rant, you can accuse, you can flatter, you can say whatever you want, and nobody knows. Nobody catches on. This proverb says, you know what happens to the fire when you deprive it of wood? The fire goes out. No fuel. You know what happens to quarreling when there's no whisperer? No person speaking in secret without accountability, not answerable for what he or she says. You know what happens to quarreling? It ceases. This can revolutionize your life. If you will do one of two things, if you'll do both of two things. One, hold yourself answerable for everything you say to everyone. You know what that does? It forces you to be the same person in every conversation, to make the same judgments, to be consistent, to be answerable for what you say. Or, put it differently, not two-faced, the same person. The second thing that you should do is insist. And I'm not using that word lightly. Insist that the people who talk to you live by the same standard. You don't have to listen to the nonsense of the whisperer. You don't have to sit for that. It is not gracious to hear someone out when they are seeking to evade responsibility for what they say. That's not grace. That's participation in their sin. And in the world of Proverbs, God is coming to us and saying, you're in a fallen world, and you got to start acting like it. This is a world at war with the truth and rebellion against God, and that rebellion goes all the way into our hearts. You got to draw a line. You got to draw a line for yourself. You got to draw a line for the people talking to you. You do not have to participate in sin in order to be considered gracious and merciful. Let's do another one. Kindling. Another fire analogy here. Verse 21, as charcoal to hot embers and wood to fire, so is a quarrelsome man for kindling strife. You know, we all know what kindling is. It's the dry, kind of rotten wood that just catches fire instantly. So you use that wood to get the fire going and heat it up, and then you can catch the more dense, harder wood on fire that's going to burn longer. So kindling is really useful. It's also really useful for starting quarrels. All you have to do is go to that quarrelsome person, the person who just, if they're not in the middle of a fight with somebody, there's a hole in their heart. They're itching for the next controversy. They want the next argument, the next debate, they want to come out with the next accusation. And you know, this quarrelsome person may not yell. This quarrelsome person may be a sort of passive-aggressive quarrelsome person. They pick fights by throwing out little darts and then walking away. And then you're the person who's angry because you just got the dart and you know it. but they get to evade responsibility for this. By the way, why am I talking to you in this tone of kind of harsh judgment about what people do and what people say? Because, friends, if we don't see the world the way God sees it, we're on the road to ruin. It's that simple. And if we want to take responsibility for the character of our community, then we've got to be able to say, we're not going to go further down this road. We're going to go in God's direction. And so the harshness of Proverbs, partially I'm letting some of that through, and throughout this series I've been doing that. I have to say, I have to watch it in this sermon for myself, because these things do make me angry. As a pastor, I've been a pastor for about 30 years. This is every day. Gossiping, complaining, whispering, quarreling, day after day after day. And so this is not like abstract doctrinal concepts for me. It's personal, and I can't disguise that. It's also personal because over 30 years I've seen the very real destruction, and I think you've seen it too, that happens in communities and churches when there is no restraint on the tongue. And everyone has a privilege of evading responsibility with what they say. I've seen what that does. And I think you have too. And so we are at this point of this collision with the reality of the world that God has made and the reality of who we are. And so there's this quarrelsome man. What does he do? He kindles strife. He's the dry wood that catches fire instantly, and the heat just keeps generating. And, well, get rid of him. Get rid of the quarreling. Quarreling ceases. The fire's got no fuel. You can't get it going. Or put it differently, if you have a community of people who have resolved in their hearts, in the fear of the Lord and under the grace of Jesus Christ, to say, we are going to be slow to speak and slow to anger. If you have that kind of community, you're going to have peace. And it's going to be a powerful thing. It's going to be a healing thing. It's going to be something that restores people's hope and trust in community. It's powerful. So here's another one, verse 22. Back to the whisperer. The words of a whisperer are like delicious morsels. They're like candy. I love candy. That's why I don't eat very much of it. Because once I start, I'm not going to stop. I love it, especially chocolate. Those of you who know me know that my thing is chocolate. It's my drug of choice. And it's great. It works. It makes me happy. And when I'm happy, everyone around me is happy. So chocolate is good for the whole community. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But anyway, I don't eat very much of it, because if I did, I'd be in trouble in other ways, even though I'd be happy. And so here it is. There's this other kind of candy. It's relational candy. It's that person who sidles up to you and whispers with that confidential tone of inside information. I've got something you need to know, and I trust you. You're a smart person. You and I, we're like this. We get each other, right? That kind of confidence, that is one of the deepest kinds of flattery you can give to somebody. And then you you just slip in this candy of information. Maybe it's a judgment about somebody. Maybe it's a piece of information that you're not entitled to. But you've got it and you hear it, and it's relational candy because this person who you admire, this person trusts you and returns your high regard. And so now you've got this little society of two. We know this, and we've got to jump on everybody else. So it's this sweet sense of I'm one of the insiders. I'm ahead of everybody else, and I'm with this person who's in the know. That's the sort of whisperer we're talking about. Again, fear of God. Well, like we said about the earlier whisperer, and like we said about the quarrelsome man or woman, this person treasures their own agenda more than they fear God. And they will do whatever it takes to realize their ambitions, even if it means getting your trust, using that trust, and then balling it up and throwing your trust in the trash. You ever had that happen to you? It's a devastating thing. The words of a whisperer are like delicious morsels. They go down into the inner parts of the body. Now, here's the thing about this. When you hear these things, when you get this relational candy and it goes into your mind and heart, you can't unhear it. You can't step back and hit delete. And now I'm going to restore my image of that other person we were just talking about. You can't do that. Especially if the information is really incendiary, really damning. If that information really goes in deep, you can't get rid of it. So there's another kind of responsibility here that we like to evade in secret. We like to be able to say things without anyone calling us out and being held accountable, answerable for what we say. But then we also like to hear things without being accountable for it, without anybody saying, why did you listen to that? Do you really want your judgment of the people around you formed by a person who is not answerable to anybody and just goes around saying all of these things, all of them different, tailored to the individuals they talk to? Do you really want that? This is saying the candy of a whisperer, you can't get rid of it. So you have to guard your ears and guard your mind and guard your heart against getting hooked on this kind of chocolate. Okay, here's my point. We got the picture of the cavalry up here. What happens to the gossips when the cavalry shows up and demands answers? You said this about this person. What happens to the gossips when the cavalry shows up and the whole community starts to ask questions? Who said this? Who made this accusation? Or who gave this characterization of this person? Because we don't really know whether that's true or not. And this goes right into the heart of our trust in each other. We want answers. Who said this? Who started this? You know what happens to the gossips? They retreat. They flee. Because the cavalry just showed up. That's you, friends. You are the community of the saints. You are the body of Christ. You are the temple of the Holy Spirit. It's time for you to show up on the field and to demand that our relationships be rich with trust and strongly defended. That means taking a stand, even in private, against whispering and quarreling and all this kind of thing. Now, let's go deeper into this, into the world of the whisperer, the gossip, the quarreling person. What is this world? Where do they live? What's it like in their head? Solomon goes there. He describes for us in poetic language what this world is like and what it's like to relate to this kind of person. Look with me at verse 23. This person smiles on the outside like the glaze covering an earthen vessel, are fervent lips with an evil heart. Some of you are experts on pottery, and I love pottery, and one of the things that's lovely about pottery is the shine, the glaze on the surface of it. But this is saying that glaze can be like the smile that disarms you, covering up hate in the heart, evil in the heart. I've got one set of intentions for you in my heart, but I don't want you to know that. So I'm going to smile real big. I'm going to disarm you. You're never going to know until the knife has gone in. So this is a divided person. This person has one set of objectives deep down, and that's where they live. And the strategy is to make everybody else, kind of distract everybody else from those deeper intentions. Keep everybody kind of at ease, relaxed, off their game, and then you can get away with whatever you want to get away with. Think about this. Fervent lips. Devoted. Sounds like this person is deeply on your side. Have you ever been betrayed at this level? Now, again, I can't disguise the fact that this is personal. I'm trying to keep the personal heat out of it because it's just counterproductive, but I can't disguise it. This hurts. There is nothing that goes deeper or lasts longer than this level of betrayal. I believed that smile. I listened to that fervency, and look where it got me. And we've all been there. Here's another one. The world inside the character of the whisperer. Verse 24. This one even more direct. Whoever hates disguises himself with his lips. Now think about that. That's kind of a weird image. You put a mask on with your lips. Do I stretch them? What happens here? This is painting a picture of who I am and who you are and how we relate to each other. I'm talking to you in this way that gives you one picture, but the reality in my heart is quite different. So it's a disguise with words. And then the admonition, verse 25, when he speaks graciously. So he speaks, or she speaks with this politeness, this regard, this cordiality that makes you think, yeah, this person's on my team. When he speaks graciously, believe him not, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. Now, this is Solomon at some of his most direct here, and it makes us wonder, Solomon, are you telling us to be paranoid? Are you actually telling us that we shouldn't believe anybody who is polite. We shouldn't believe any kind of cordiality, that when people are reassuring to us and when they are supportive, we shouldn't believe a word of it. No, he's not saying that. He's saying there is a kind of fervency that is a disguise, and you need to know that, and you need to watch out for it. So where is the fear of God here? For the person who is disguising himself or herself, that person is saying, there's a space deep inside of me that no one sees. God doesn't see it. Only I know. And because only I know, that means I can get away with saying all of these kind of evasive, disguising, distracting things that keep people off their guard. No one will know. Where is the fear of the Lord in that? It's nowhere. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. If that person took the step of saying, oh, wait, God knows. He reads my heart. You can see it. It's open before him. If that person took that step, that would be a step toward saying, if God knows, that means I'm not really succeeding at this disguise. And I will be held accountable for it. That is knowledge. That's a step into the real world. So, in the mind and heart of this person, there's this delusion that somehow I am excused from feeling this hatred and harboring it and distracting the people around me from it. And Solomon says we are not excused. In fact, the next thing he says is it's going to be exposed. Verse 26, though his hatred be covered with deception, his wickedness will be exposed in the assembly. The assembly. You know what that is? That's the cavalry. That's the congregation. That's the community as a whole. Because what happens is, and I've seen this again and again and again, the whisperer seems to be on top for a long time, maybe years, maybe a decade. And then all of a sudden, everyone starts to compare notes about what they've heard from this person. And at that moment, this person's credibility is shattered, and the community knows what has been happening. And this knowledge is usually quiet, doesn't explode, not very often anyway. In real communities, this knowledge just sort of, it comes like the dawn in the morning. It's very quiet. And you open your eyes at a certain point and you realize, oh, the sun's come up. No fanfares, no trumpets, no breaking news. It's just the light dawned. That's how this works. And the wickedness of personal betrayal and deception is going to be exposed in the assembly. How does that happen? Verse 27, whoever digs a pit will fall into it, and a stone will come back on him who starts it rolling. This is not karma. This is the judgment of God. Karma is impersonal. Karma is just energy. You start negative energy going, you're going to receive negative energy at some point. It's going to come back on you. The judgment of God is, I knew what was in your heart. I knew the words before you said them. I followed this deception that you perpetrated on the people around you, and I am pulling the rug right out from under you. I'm just biding my time. And why would God bide his time? It's only one reason. To give you and me a chance to turn and act differently. That's why. God tells us this in numerous places in the Scriptures. And the whole premise of Proverbs is, as we've seen all year, turn while there's time. And there is time. Because God is gracious and compassionate, even on the whisperer. The whisperer can turn. But know this, you started a stone rolling, it's going to roll back on you. Because God is watching that stone, and He's watching you, and He has the power to send that stone back on you. And then this summary in verse 28, really summarizing a whole collection of verses that we've been surveying here. A lying tongue hates its victims. This is strong language. No compromise here. There's truth-telling and there's lying. And the standard for lying is covering up what you actually think and feel toward people in your heart. Covering that up, disguising it so that you gain an advantage that way. The lying tongue, who does not resolve conflicts but seeks to gain advantage in them. The lying tongue hates its victims. Victims. It's predatory. And then this. A flattering mouth, the glaze on the pottery. The fervent lips, the big smile. The smile that's bigger than it needed to be. Works ruin. Beloved, you have a decision before you as individuals. And you have a decision before you as a community. And we need to process that decision together for a couple of minutes here. The question came in, if everyone starts comparing notes, isn't that gossiping? No. Gossiping is when you hear something or say something to someone that they have no right to hear. When someone comes to you with a judgment about someone's reputation in the community, in this church, and you hear that judgment, you hear it in their voice, you see it in their attitude, you start to say, where did that come from? Because that person's reputation is valuable, and I don't want to see that person's reputation destroyed. I don't want to see that person's reputation harmed. I want to see that person's reputation upheld. If you then say to the person who's talking to you, there seems to be a problem between you and this person, could you tell me where that problem started? You are taking an action to defend the reputation of someone in the community or the church. And can I put it to you? That is your job. I'm deputizing you this morning. It's your job. There's a point in a conversation where you need answers. Where did this start? And why are you telling me about this? That kind of comparing notes, if something is genuinely a problem, then that conflict can be opened up, mediation given, counsel given, and resolution, restoration can happen. In fact, it cannot happen until that kind of comparing notes occurs. But in order to do this, you have to be the person who is going to treat this confidentially, who's going to treat this not as a personal little project, but as something that God values above all. And so you're going to do whatever you can directly and personally to intervene in that matter. And that kind of comparing notes is the sort of defending people's reputation that we are called to do in order to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace, Ephesians 4. And so there's a whole art to this. There's a lot of wisdom needed in this. It is difficult. It is heartbreaking, but it is necessary. So, no, when you see something where someone's casting aspersions on another person in the church or in the community, and you're saying, I don't understand what the basis for that is. That's not gossiping. That's the cavalry showing up and saying, reputations are holy, especially when it's a repenting sinner. I want to stick up this morning for the people who are in the process of repenting of their sins. Maybe they've gotten in trouble. Maybe they're turning from their sins before they got in trouble. But I want us to be the community where their reputations as repentant sinners are guarded, not exploited. This is vital. So, no, it is not gossip. Could it turn into gossip? Yes. Everything can. But in and of itself, we are charged to guard the reputations of the people around us. So let's ask some questions here. Two of them very quickly. First of all, do I care as much about the reputations of others as I do about my own? I care about my reputation a lot. Do I care about the reputations of everyone else too? So this is a question to ask yourself. It's an individual question. What is my real priority here? I would put it to you that if you shifted your priorities, and I'm telling you something that I have had to learn how to do, and it's hard, but it's worth it. If you shift your priorities to say, my reputation is a goner. It just is. I'm too exposed. I shoot my mouth off every Sunday morning. I'm making people mad all the time. I'm always Hitler to somebody. My reputation, gone. God's going to have to defend that. But your reputation, I'm guarding that. Your reputation is exceedingly valuable to me, especially if you're in trouble and you're turning. It's very important to me that your reputation be defended. I would just encourage you, make that shift. God will defend your reputation, and he will use this church to do that as well. But it's a healthy shift of priorities. Second question. When someone tells me a story, do I file this story in the folder labeled confidential, or do I file it in another folder labeled useful? I didn't know that, and now I do. Where do you file these stories? I think if you answer these two questions, you will discover where the place of repentance in your heart is. We are all learning God's wisdom. And in this area of words, we are all learning it very deeply and in real time, and it's a steep learning curve. So maybe you're saying, I'm already down that road. I'm a gossip. I'm hooked on it. I love it. Can't quit. And I don't fear God for this. I've got a world in my head where I am the critic of the world, and I am always right. And I really kind of want to keep it that way. But, Pastor, I recognize myself in what you describe, and if that person came at me, I would be offended. So I've got to do something, even though I don't understand what the problem is. Here's what you need to do. You need to call the cavalry to circle around you and call you to account. You need to say to the people around you, okay, I am quarrelsome. They probably already know this, but you need to say it. I'm quarrelsome. I have been judgmental. I know it, but I don't understand it, and I don't know what to do about it. Will you help me? Will you flag my words? Will you lovingly call me out? Will you demand the answers when I am seeking to evade responsibility? If you do this, if you call the cavalry, you will learn. And that's all we need. Because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. And what we're beginning to know is that there are two things we need most of all in life to know God's wisdom. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind and all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself.